This is Mandy with the SOULfully Sustainable podcast, I suppose, these days. And I have with me a friend of mine, Kathy, or Kate, I suppose, as you're known. Knowles. Mm-hmm. I know you as Kathy, yet sometimes I see your emails and they say Kate.
Yeah, so. I jump around. I mean, I'm really Catherine, so people have called me all sorts of things all my life. But I grew up as Kathy, essentially, and now in some ways I'm Kate, and
some of that transformation, right? We grow up,
and some people call me Katie, and some people call me Catherine, and it's just like all sorts of. I mean, lots of other names are done that way.
Yeah,
Pat,
totally
Patty,
are.
Patricia.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was working in my old job, I would ask, and what I would start with as sort of an icebreaker is, in case your name's, it shows here as Kathy, is that what you want me to call you, or is that what only your grandma or your crazy auntie so-and-so would call you that? Because sometimes we have triggers associated to, like, which sometimes it makes us twitch, because only my whatever called me that, and I don't want to, so. Names are important. Yeah. And Kathy and I have been trying to get together, we were just chatting about that, for about a year, to have a conversation. We always have such incredible, deep, beautiful, easy conversations. There's never been a time where I haven't been with you where we just don't just dive in. There's never like a preface of like, how's the weather? It's just we go wherever it is that is presenting, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So this intentional conversation, I think, started as the invitation to, I want to sit and talk with you. I'm doing this radio show, which I'm not doing anymore. It's more podcasting, I suppose. And let's chat. And then I think later in the fall, I get an email back from you saying, I think I know what it is I want to talk about. And so we've been talking about living the gift and what gift economies might look like, or redefining how, acknowledging how that has been, or what our experience of gifting has been in our own lives, and then how we're diving in and doing that differently, or maybe some of the notions and ideas of Charles Eisenstein, for example, how his work is informing how you live and experience gifting, sharing, gift economies, alternative economies. Like, there's so much language that people want to set their hat on, but that's where I want to go today. So I don't know where we'll take ourselves, but already it's been juicy.
Sometimes, for me, when I think about the word economy, I automatically think money, right? And I see, and I mean, if we would just even get rid of gift and separate out the idea of like living in the flow and living from fear, or however you want to, whatever you want to call that, into a consciousness stream or whatever that is. Because like I was saying before, I think some people, the minute you say, oh, they live by gift economy, they're getting in this black and white vision in their mind, like, oh, they don't use any money, right? And that's not true. They still use money. We all live in a monetary world, and we have to have money. And then people will pick apart that. Oh, well, that's impossible. You can't live like that. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I think as I think if people look at their lives and start looking at past experiences or past situations in their lives to show how that gift, that flow came into their lives in ways that can be something so simple. Like, I mean, I think of an example. A few years ago, I was just realizing, I walk a lot, and the back of my runner was starting to wear out. And I thought to myself, oh, these were really expensive runners, but man, I've had them a long time. And I guess it's about time I'll have to replace them. And I was just kind of, I'll have to get some new runners, soon. And I didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I bumped into a friend I hadn't seen for a while, and she said, she said, my daughter bought this really amazing pair of runners, but it's just not working out for her. And I think they're your size. And so she said, would you be interested in trying them on? And I said, oh, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Well, I tried them on, and they were just like having a new pair of feet. And I was just like, wow, like, here's these brand new pair of runners. And all I did was say a few weeks ago to no one that, oh, I'm going to have to probably get a new pair of runners. And we all have those experiences. We all can look back and in our own lives and see those things. And to me, that's the gift economy. That's that's that flow, right? I mean, I'm sure you have examples of things like we all have that. And then we think that we want to recreate it, but we don't have to recreate it. It's just that letting go of allowing, I suppose.
Yes.
Right?
Well, being open to receiving. It's
yes.
We think we're open to receiving, but there's lots of beliefs and values and attitudes and ways that we've been enculturated that, the whole not enough mindset. Like we have to start with being able to receive and see, because I know at times in my life where I've been presented with a compliment or somebody wants to gift me something, or they want to give me a pair of shoes, whatever it is, and I have a hard time. It's like, oh no, it's okay. Oh no, you take. Oh, how we dismiss that. I can't even receive the gift if I'm not willing to feel that and receive it. We're just going to jump around. This is how this is going to work. Yeah. And that makes me think of it was right there. It was really good too. Yeah, it's totally gone. It's left my brain. Yeah, like the receiving, the being in flow, being the important piece of any currency, no matter what that is. Love, attention, respect, generosity of spirit, any of that. My experience with, I suppose I'll call it gift economies, because that's how I came to start learning about it and exploring it more, is the importance of not holding things. Like we have a tendency to hold and hoard things and hold on to them and keep them static, whether it's a physical dollars and cents, or it's an idea or a thought, or my money in my bank account is just a concept. It's not a thing. I don't have quarters under my mattress. I have numbers on a screen. And so the more I read, and Charles's work talks about this a lot too, our abundance, our currency really always does best when we keep it in motion, that giving and taking, that giving and receiving. I don't like the word taking, but receiving, and keeping it moving. I totally lost my train of thought, Kathy, but that is important for me. And watching where I hold, where I feel like I don't have enough, or I'm scarce in certain areas. And sometimes it's ideas and thoughts, or love, right? Like I'll hoard a moment and keep it and replay it in my mind, and it takes away from the value and the sacredness of it, rather than just being present and receiving it, allowing it to flood my tissues, and then move on in the form of me now sharing something with someone else as a result of that. So it's less about the coinage and more about that process of flow.
Exactly, the process of flow. And not getting caught up in the plus and minuses, like not getting caught, well, this happened, so I have to do this, or, just sort of doing the giving of the gift, or whatever it is. I mean, it can be something material or not material, but that just coming from that place of when it hits you, like when it comes to you, not that, because we are in this world of, I give you a gift at Christmas, you feel you're obligated to give me a gift, or whatever it is, right? And we have this sense of social obligation in that way. And to me, that's not gift. It becomes this, that inability to receive without having to give that back to that person.
Yes.
And I think that was something that I still learn, but I did stop to learn that because of that wanting to know that I am loved, that I can receive that, and that by passing it on, I'm not less, and by hoarding it, I'm not more. It's just a knowing, and that I didn't have to keep track of who I owed something to, and I still catch myself sometimes going, I probably should take something to them, or whatever, and then I stop, hang on a minute, like they've done this wonderful thing for me, and I've been doing all these wonderful things for other people, not because of that reason, but when you really step back, you can see that you just automatically, but we don't always count those things that we give out,
No.
whether that's time or a compliment or a tangible item, money to a donation of something, whatever it is, we don't always look at that from us. We just see everything that comes to us and think, oh, they're so
now
kind.
I'm in a deficit.
That's right. Now I owe them, right? And but when I think about that in my own life, when I give, I'm not holding anyone responsible to say, okay, well, I brought you a dozen preserves, you owe, like I'm not waiting for them to bring me something back. And yet we have that thinking in our own mind when someone gives us something that we have to give them back. And it's not, I don't think that's the thinking that's really out there. It's just this social construct that's got stuck in our heads. And and I love that idea of the money, in that money gets in that flow and it just keeps moving and moving and moving. But if we stop it, and hold too much of it, then it's not moving anymore, right? And oh my gosh, there's so much. It's like, where do you start?
Because it's not a. I think before we started recording, we were talking about or maybe it was at the beginning, but. When you say economy, language is important. So choosing the right nominalization word to describe something is important because we have history with words. So money means something. When I say money, the listeners are like somewhere inside of themselves that has triggered something, whatever that is. And so when we say economy, we associate it with dollars and cents and mortgage rates and that wheel, like that whatever that machine is that goes on its own. I have to be able to take it back a step and then really look at my own relationship with economy and what it's been, and then there has to be a redefinition phase for that. So sometimes it requires that I step out of the old ways that I've engaged that economy system, and what you're speaking of in terms of the gift and ability to receive and then not keeping track. That keeping track, that score sheet is the preface of that economy.
Sure it is.
And so we have to be willing to look and actually really look at a whole and go, okay, what has my experience with money been? What has my experience with an economy been? What's my experience with gifting and abundance and scarcity and all of these things? How have I lived in the past? And be willing to sort of look under the carpets a bit and say, okay, what else could this be? And it starts with me because money isn't a real thing. It's a nominalization to describe a process between two people, to a business and a person, whatever. It starts with how I embody that. It starts with how I view myself. If I view myself as worthy of being a gift and in and for someone else, and when you were speaking, what I could hear was the storyline that I grew up with around money. And I don't remember anybody specifically saying this. I just knew this is what I left my childhood with, was first of all, when you're gifted with something, you turn it away. Oh, no, thank you. Oh, that's too much, or that's too generous. Or I overcompensate. So you might bring me brownies and I write you a check for $500 or something just totally over the top, unreasonable. And what I know now, as I start to play with reciprocity and receiving, specifically receiving, period, not receiving, making the plan for giving, but fully receiving a gift as it is meant, and trusting and assuming the presupposition is you're giving me the brownies because you genuinely want to. I'm just going on that preface, but really receiving it. And receiving it mindfully, because that honors the gift, that honors you. When I dismiss it and I say, oh no, here's 28 more things to give you because you gave me something, we diminish the sacredness of it. We diminish that act of gifting, for sure.
Yeah. It's such an interesting, there's so many things wrapped into it, right? And like you said, we have to really observe our own history with money, or giving gifts, whether it's money or not. And I think when I think about money transactions, there's such a separation between who I'm giving the money to and what I'm receiving, and there's no real relationship. In fact, it's getting worse because because we have self-checkout, and so you're talking to a machine now, and there might be somebody standing there, it's even changing it more.
Yeah.
Like there's such a distance now when you pass that actual cash to
Yeah.
people, whereas when you pass something to someone, there's a relationship that's there, and it's not asking for anything. It's just a relationship that I think is so important for us to maintain, instead of being in these little silos and little boxes of our own, and we just go into the store and out of the store and into the store and out of the store and hand the cash. Go to work, get the cash, go to the store, give the cash. And I just think that we're such a broader world and a more cohesive world when we get back into that flow of of what's everyone's birthright. Of the abundance that's here.
I love that. The term birthright is just, I don't even know prior to a few years ago if I'd ever even heard the word in that term of like it's my birthright to be treated with respect and generosity of spirit and integrity and to be and live abundant, for sure. But that isn't the storyline that we're taught, right? Everything is in, everything's commodified, and it's in scarce availability, and then we put these systems in place to keep us separated from that transaction. So I think about how I purchase things. In living back in town has shifted that on its head again, because I'm near retail, where I wasn't near retail when I lived in the country, so it was never even an option. I could go to the post office and see Betty Ann, but that's the extent of, I could buy stamps. So the man, I'm just all over today. The retail piece of it, or the barriers that we've set up in these retail situations, whether I go to the grocery store, what I'm thinking of is my intentional choice to purchase from farmers, for example. So when I go to the farmer's market, I see Trevor, I shake his hand, I see his children, I acknowledge them, I watch them grow from season to season. I'm giving him dollars and cents. But there's something more, and it is what draws me back. The produce is great, thank you. But it isn't just that. It is the engagement, the humanity, the connection, him telling me what new squash he's growing, or, new techniques that he used for his strawberries, or there's a human factor in that. And I treasure that. I treasure that so much more than going into Safeway and whatever, buying a pint of strawberries in plastic that I have no idea where they came from. I think the shift is going from these automated, so we used to have interactions like way back when we would trade for what we needed and those sorts of things. We would live off the land, we would grow our own food, we would shoot our own animals, we would build our own houses, we were connected. And then the modern times come, and then we have more conveniences, and I'm air quoting that because I don't actually think they're that convenient, but and then we go through that time. And so what we're missing is that human interaction, that connectedness, that serendipitous feeling when I was just thinking about you, and then you see a person on the other end of that transaction. It's like the new swing when we start talking about, what does Charles call it? The better heart our worlds know is possible, a better world our hearts know is possible. Is bringing the humanity, is bringing the connection, the deeply sacred back into our transactions, into our currencies. Mindfully choosing currencies and different types of currencies, and each one of them being infused with a human connected reciprocity, rather than an automated teller of, okay, it just spit out a bunch of green bills, now I'm going to go trade them for, something in a package, sort of a thing.
And I think I think you've hit a really good point with the humanizing, because our world has so dehumanized everything, and which is part of the fear-based, all of our fear-based things. And so if we can say, let's get out of fear-based decision making and flow and move into love-based flow, gift flow, whatever flow we want to call that. To me, that's where that synchronicity and those really cool things show up. Because of that interconnection we all have, that we're all interconnected. And it's when we break that interconnection over here in that fear-based world. But when we can get back into it, all those wonderful things start showing up. Yeah. And I think we are trained to dismiss them. You know, we're trained to that's just silliness. Oh, that just happened.
Coincidence.
That's correct. It's just coincidence. But after a while, coincidence becomes more often when we can let go, right? And we can move over there and let go of the control. And I think for me, it was really worthwhile to step back and say, okay, think about the last few years of my life and what kinds of these things have happened in my life that I didn't plan for, that I didn't say, okay, I'm going to save this much money and do X. And then all of a sudden, like I'm 3 or 4 pages into writing these little, really sometimes insignificant things, but realizing, wow, like that happened, you know, and then it was like, okay, so then I just let go, right? I just let go. And that's so easy to say and so hard to do because we're so conditioned, right? And the environment that we step out into every day is so conditioned, and the energy that way is like, you're crazy if you want to step over there and let go, right? But watching it in our own lives, the realization of how much is there and the abundance and
but you have to choose that lens. Like you have to choose, you know, people do gratitude journals instead of like my life sucks journals. Like, whatever that used to be. And it's the same thing. I have to choose the intention for my life. I'm the creator. I first have to know I create my own reality, and then it's like magic begets magic. So when I start to look for the magical, I'm gonna equate what you're saying to magic, because I think that's what it is. The serendipitous moments where everything comes together. You couldn't have scripted it if you tried. It just all fell in your lap, and you're like, wow, what a coincidence. That isn't coincidence. I believe that's the magic of how we create our lives. But I have to choose to look for that, acknowledge it, recognize it when it's happening in the moment, go, oh, how amazing that blah 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 is going on. And the more I stop and tune in and allow myself the pleasure of recognizing those moments, the more I create them, the more it happens. And then I know I'm in the flow because it's happening left and right. I'm always in awe of, you know, like you're explaining with the shoes, those moments where I think a thought and then, you know, the phone rings or the and so what happens in those moments when I choose to recognize them and intentionally seek them out, they happen more often. I can recognize them. That becomes my autopilot of how I create. It becomes easy. I don't have to think or do anything specific in order for things to fall in alignment. And then the most important piece happens. I begin to trust myself. So the letting go and then the trusting that, you know, staying out of the fear model, as you talked about, only comes when I can trust something else. And so maybe it's just the essence of me and that I manifest what I need. Maybe that's what I trust in. But if I don't look for those things, I could never really trust. Your logical mind wants you to give it a really great, solid bunch of proof that this is going to be okay. Like, how am I going to pay that bill, or how am I going to travel because that's what I want to do? Your brain wants to map out an ABCD script for it. But we are quantum biological. We are magical. We manifest everything in our lives and can do that without our brain having anything to do with it. But until I've tried it on a few times and intentionally looked for it and watched it and see it in others, then I start to trust, and then it becomes easier, right?
I agree. And I think it's also about being very clear, you know, because I can get into my head and go, okay, yeah, that's something I'd like to see manifest in my life.
Yeah.
And then the other part of me is going, oh, well, that's ridiculous. You know, how is that ever going to come to be? And, you know, and then all of a sudden everything is like pulling it back. Well, just go for half, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, just go for, you know, just in my mind, you know, well, just ask for half, you know, just kind of look for the half or the part way. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, you've put that out there, but you keep putting out another message and another message, and then you think, well, why doesn't that ever happen to me? You know, like I've been waiting. You know, I'm trying not to be controlling, but all these things going on in my head are going, you know, like, well, don't go for all of it, just go for half, or just go for this little bit, or that little bit. That's exactly. Don't, you know, and then you realize when you just kind of like just set it out and don't think about it in that way, don't analyze it or stop it, then that comes through if I don't try to control, right? But it's all that other stuff that gets in the way, you know, and I mean our fear, right? Our fear. And, you know, and I think it's interesting because I was bumping into stuff on Green Renaissance. Do you go on to Green Renaissance? Oh, you'd love it. Okay. And anyway, today they had a little clip about a gentleman talking about living in the flow and how he had to get to the bottom of the bottom before he realized that the gifts are there. And he made some comment partway through this tiny little interview, was kind of like, I can still panic, you know, when my bank account is zero and I know this bill is coming, you know, but inevitably when it needs to be paid, there's money, you know. And he said, I just keep having to let go, you know. And it wasn't just that only thing that he was talking about, but, you know, it was just like, you know, he's right. Like, it is just always there, right? And whether I expend a whole bunch of worry about it or not, you know, and if I let go, right? If I don't try to make it happen. But that's so easy to say, you know,
it is.
And not so easy to do all the time.
Well, especially when the stake, and I'm air quoting here, the stakes are high. So like your light bill needs, or your mortgage needs to be paid, or your whatever. I've had a lot of examples in the last year and a half where my son his body has been dealing with an autoimmune disease, and so there's been medical costs associated with that we have never planned for, didn't know we would ever need to, and has to be done. So I can not go buy groceries for a week or two because I have a pretty good stockpile. Like, we're not going to be in a deficit that way. But, you know, when they're doing a procedure and they need a certain steroid, that has to be paid for, right? Like that's, so the content and the importance of what needs to be paid for, or like whatever that looks like, has shifted and become more intensified. So the level of trust and surrender that it requires of me, that I need, that's not even the right language, that I have to engage, it's up the ante of it all. So it's like, you know, manifesting extra, you know, change to go get a coffee, that's fantastic. But manifesting $500 for a steroid's a different ballgame. And not that I'm sitting down and like thinking about how to manifest it, but my point is that it takes, depending on what we create for content, it takes so much more for us to stay present and trust. And I think that's part of my evolution, is really, it doesn't matter what it's about. What matters is that I'm in that space where I trust, and everything I have ever wanted, no exceptions, has always been accounted for. So if it is a true intention and it's authentic in alignment with who I am and who I'm becoming, the money appears, or the whatever appears. It happens always. But when I get caught, like you said, in that like mind issue, when your brain's trying to make sense of it or plan it out or figure it out, like that's a sticky place to be. So
sure it is.
It's shifted this year. It's really, I'm going to say tested. I don't think that I'm being tested, because I think I'm creating my own life. But it has tested my ability to set aside the content, to step back and just feel into the gift, feel into the flow, feel into myself. And then I trust that, and then the rest follows. There's nothing to do. There's no A, B's, and C's of it. I had somebody say to me once in the last year, so how do you manifest? Tell me about what you've manifested. They wanted me to account for everything that I had manifested in my life, like as a manual to tell them how to or something. And a few people had answered this person and gave them examples, and that it was an intentional book scripted thing is how I felt. And my answer was, I manifest everything, whether I think it's polite or not. I create all of my reality. And I want to be clear to people listening that I'm not suggesting, because there's, like The Secret is the book The Secret, and then they have documentaries that talk about manifesting. I'm not talking about some strategy of harnessing energetic energy to give you a bunch of money in your bank account. I am not, that's not what where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the fact that I'm an energetic being, and what I think is what becomes my reality, and being clear in those thoughts. And there's nothing to do. You think the thought, you let it go, your shoes show up, right?
That's right.
And or you change your mind, and you don't want shoes, and then they don't show up. Like whatever. It's not something to be done. It's a way of being. It's a being in flow. It's your authentic self streaming through your device that creates that.
Absolutely, and it's for me, it's learning patience and less control.
Yeah.
And you're right. When the stakes get higher, you know, what's our conditioned response? It's to go into fear, right? And we all do that. And most of our world is controlled from that fear. You know, I mean, turn on any television, you know, listen to any story. I mean, you need this kind of insurance and that kind of insurance, and you know, and don't you have this much money away for retirement, and all, you know, on and on and on and on and on, and you better get this injection and take that pill, and you know, just in case. And we're run by that, and I just think too much so, you know, and to a point of unhealthiness, and that's why I love more and more people talking about, like, let's just step out of that and see the richness that comes, you know. And it's not about the richness so I can fly somewhere and buy the multi-million-dollar home or whatever. It's in a richness and abundance. And I watched that community in Missouri, and I mean, to the outside world, they have nothing. To their world, they live in such fantastic abundance. It's unbelievable, and they are just so grateful for every moment of their lives. And it's not that they don't have bad times or disagreements, but they're grateful for those too, because it helps them to grow. But you know, in such a short time on that land, they went from being not producing anything to producing almost all of their food, you know, and supporting thousands and thousands of visitors every year who left transformed, no matter how they came. They left transformed from a gift of people who are just saying, we're human, we make mistakes, we're making mistakes, but this is how we see it's important in life, and this is what we want to give, and this is how we want to live. And that so touched me there. And it was just like, you know, each time I would get there and step out of my vehicle, it was like I'd come home, you know, and it was just beautiful. Even the ugliness was beautiful, you know, and the underlying currents were beautiful. It was just that people were there with this idea of, let's move from fear and let's go over here, and let's be conscious of that, and watch what it produces, and it's always in abundance, you know. And they, you know, they didn't go hungry, they you know, they didn't go without, in the sense of they had their necessities of life covered. And but we forget what those necessities are, I think, and that brings us back into that fear. So.
And it's easy, it depends on the environment too. So again, living back in town, I see stores every day. I didn't see stores every day before, and overwhelmed. And I had this epiphany 2 days ago. We were driving, and I was counting the number of banks in the little place up here, and I think there's like 6 or 7 of different, I'm air quoting again, different banks. And I said to my husband, it's so fascinating to me that we have these pockets of retail stores, whether they're like grocery stores or banks or whatever, but it's the perception of choice. So we've got 8 different banks, and I promise you they're all connected in some way. Or 8, you go to the next one over, and you have 12 different businesses that are probably owned by 3 companies. So it's laid out as this beautiful, abundant, choice, diverse, whatever, but it really, really isn't. And so that observation just makes me go back inward and go, what do I need? What is meaningful? What lights me up? What is authentic for me? What, you know, is supporting who I'm becoming? Because my needs change. If I were to only look exterior to me, I would think I need a lot of things. Like I need some eyelashes and I need some, workout gear or like whatever. There's things that I don't have in my current life. If I looked outside of me, or even I'm sure TV does this too. We haven't had cable in years, so I'm not subjected to commercials the same way. But taking it back to myself allows me to run it through my own filter, and then what emerges is important, because it was important for me to buy a Berkey water filter. That was a purchase I made with dollars and cents that I had to save for, that I had to plan for. It was from a store, but that was more in alignment with what, where I was at and what I wanted, and it wasn't because it was sold to me, if that makes any sense. So there's something about the reevaluation of your life and your own connections with self, and then the others in your life, and then what becomes important in that is what which is what dictates which flow I jump into.
Exactly.
So.
And the choice, right?
Yeah.
The choice and the experience of that choice, and where that choice is coming from within us. Is that choice coming because of fear?
Yeah.
Or is that choice coming because I see that as being something that's important for my life, my family's life, my life in the future? And I don't know about you, but I was raised to go shopping and spend as little money as possible, to buy the cheapest things, to get the best deals, to get the biggest bargains. And you saved money and bought things, but you didn't necessarily buy the best.
Yeah.
Whereas now that I live on such a little amount of money, I buy the best.
Yeah.
I buy organic food. I spend local money. I save for those things that are in alignment with where I'm at in my life now, which also I think people have to get there in their own self-worth to say, I'm worthy of drinking really healthy water. But if we don't slow down enough to stop for a bit and have some self-awareness, then how do we get out of the other flow and start stepping into a healthier flow? And it's not like we talked about it. We're not just going to sit here and, okay, I'm going to manifest all this money and all of these things. There's still action that has to take place. But a lot of it has to be action away from fear-based decisions and towards healthier things for our well-being. And for me, I mean, earning lots of money was previously something that was very important for me and brought to my mind was very important from my family. And then to let go of that, to let go of a career that would earn me a lot of money, and people going, are you crazy? Like, and thinking that you must have married someone very, very rich, or you have a heck of a lot of money put away for you to step back like that. And I just smile because I think of the abundance that I have has nothing to do with money.
No.
It has nothing to do with money. And maybe that abundance of our future has to do with relationship and sustainability, from a community sustainability, a relationship sustainability. That's where that's going to come from in the future. And I think that's a healthy step. That's a step away from fear into a love-based economy, into a love-based world, and I think that's for me, it's healthier. And it's scary because it's vulnerable. I don't have that control. I don't always know where that X, whatever it is going to come from. And yes, I might be saving money towards X, but at the same time, X might show up in some other form. Right? So
Oh my gosh. So accountability is what jumped up to me. And I'm going to lose it here. Maybe there's a different thing I was supposed to talk about first. My permaculture teacher always talks about, he left an oil field job, so I can't remember what he said he was making, like $750,000 a year, some ridiculous amount of money, and left to do the permaculture thing. And he says, what I don't have in cash flow compared to my other job, I have in dollar value of relationship. And it's and knowing that our spider web of support is diverse when you live from this place, because you have relationship, a shoemaker and a plumber and a builder and a bread maker and a homemaker and a babysitter and like whatever your community is that you're creating and you have relationship with and are in reciprocity with, in that give and take or that give and receive. is far more valuable, especially when economies collapse and economies go away and you can't control that. So I can, one of those people in my community could die, the whole thing doesn't collapse. My financial security in my bank account, should that economy go away that way, will collapse. There won't be anywhere, the dollar's not worth anything, it's not worth anything. But the relationships, and it's not even a value worth thing, let's be clear about that. That's just the language that I have to work with right now. So the accountability piece for me, I heard this in the beginning when you were speaking as well, is, so then you said vulnerable, and so vulnerable came to me a few minutes ago too. It's in, when I'm in reciprocity or in relation with you, because we're building a community together and we're doing, we're maybe doing different things, but we are involved in each other's world, as we actually are. When we're in reciprocity with ourselves, meaning alignment, and then we're in alignment with one another, we're accountable to one another. So when you share something with me, when you gift me with something that comes to me, it comes into my body, and there's a feedback loop there, and it requires vulnerability because it requires feedback at some point. Brownies are probably not a good example. I'm not going to, I'm sure, tell you your brownies weren't any good.
I'll go right ahead.
But there's like, if you come to build my house or help me build my house, there's an accountability there. And I feel like that dehumanizing quality that happened when these systems started to just be their own mechanical thing, we've removed the humanity, and I am no longer accountable. I just have to go to Safeway and give you $10.
Exactly.
I don't have to deeply care whether or not you have food in your belly. I don't have to care whether or not your gift is going to leave you with less or more, or my lack of sharing puts you in a place. So it requires us to dig deep in our souls and in the essence of who we are and in our vulnerability, and to step out of those old patterns, because it is all uncertain. I'm putting myself out there by, having a vulnerable conversation with you, that you're not going to piss backwards and make fun of me or something. I don't know. Whatever that is, but it requires us to be different and be accountable to our word and our ethics, and not that I owe anybody anything, but I do, because we're all part of this ecosystem of humanity. And so what I do is felt somewhere else, and I'm responsible for that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And there's no way to move forward unless it's that way, because the existing systems that we've set up, whether it's educational or medical or what we've done to the planet, they're not working. They don't work. And they aren't predictable anymore. Yeah. It's totally uncertain. Look at our weather.
Yeah. And that's why in many ways, when we think of vulnerability, our world chooses to be victims, right? And we can put a whole bunch of labels and examples of that. But when we can be truly vulnerable, then that, to me, opens up for that flow, right? And it's a whole other thing. It's not being a victim. It's being vulnerable, and it's saying, this is who I really am. This is what I offer, and this is maybe what I need. This is what I'm seeking, and I think it's healthier. I mean, we weren't raised to ask for our needs or to ask straight for our needs, and it's still not acceptable. People will play around the outside of everything. Yeah. And no one asks straight for the need. Yeah. And then they're angry if you say directly, excuse me, but I need I need a ride tomorrow at 12. Would you be able to give me a ride? No, we go, what are you doing tomorrow? Yeah. What are you doing tomorrow? Are you busy in the morning? Would you be, I kind of need a ride somewhere, and
but
then
it's
we
no
wait.
Big deal if
but
you
it's
don't.
No big deal if you can't, and then we spend such energy on that victim place. And there's a great deal of fear to be vulnerable, but to be vulnerable is going, here, I need a ride tomorrow. Would you be able to take me at 12? Yeah. Period. Yeah. There it was, one simple sentence, and much less energy. It might have been a little scary, but once I get doing that a little more often, it's not so scary. Yeah. And you know what? It's less energy for the person hearing it, because then they're not trying to guess what it is you're looking for, right? And 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 that was something I taught myself to start doing.
Yes.
Because that's what I wanted. That's what I kept wanting people to do for me. I don't want to think for them anymore because it's too much energy, and it's all fear-based things, and I want to be over here, and it might look like I'm really selfish and I'm greedy and I'm whatever.
Bold.
But if you say directly to me, Kathy, can you drive me tomorrow at noon?
Yeah.
And I'll say, yes, I can, or no, I can't, and I don't even have to give you a reason why I can't.
No, you don't.
But I generally probably would. But, it's just clear.
Yeah.
It's not, what are you doing tomorrow morning? Oh, well, I've got, 17 things on my list and I want to get done. And no, you're not going to ask them. Or if you eventually get around to asking them, then you feel like you're putting it then on them, and then you play this crazy game.
Yes.
And it takes a heck of a lot of energy.
It does.
And so I just love that place of vulnerability, because to me that's the humanness. That's the human part of it. And it's so nice to get out of the game of trying to guess, right? And to me that's part of that flow, when we can get to asking direct, when we can say direct what we're thinking, what we're experiencing. And it takes practice. And we're going to stumble and fall at that. And I always can still find myself going, what are you doing tomorrow morning? And then it's just like, hang on a minute, would you drive me, X, whatever, because it's that old whatever nicety stuff, and I think that we got to let that go. It's not that we're not kind people. We are really kind people, but I think we're being kinder to ourselves by being very direct.
Yes.
And to me, that takes us into that flow space, that place of love, as opposed to the fear of, I'm not worthy enough to ask direct for my ride down to X, or whatever it is I'm asking for, and then to be capable of hearing a no, right, and not taking it, not having the end of the world happen because someone said, no, I can't drive you tomorrow at noon, and being that resourceful person. But I think that's about the accountability. It is, and to me, that vulnerability is important, because I think that helps us to allow that flow, right? That trust, right? And the trust is not necessarily that we're going to get every darn thing we ask for, but the trust is that what we need is going to come, right? It's going to come.
Well, and trust for the sake of it. So just being in that place where I can be myself, period, without repercussion or worry or calibration for what the other person might offer that, or that I might have my feelings hurt, or part of my own journey has been coming to trust this, what moves inside of me, my impulse to ask, my impulse to say no, my impulse to say yes, my impulse to say not now, whatever that is. That is the first step of being in alignment. That is the first step of living as the gift, or in the gift. If I can't listen to that and trust it, period, above everybody else's needs. Like I could, oh my gosh, what you were saying earlier about like the tiptoeing around, and I was taught you do that. You don't, like, I was always a direct child, constantly getting in shit because
so was
I was too much, and don't be, how dare you, and don't be so bold, and who do you think you are?
Right.
Like that actually is my middle name. Who do you think you are? And it has been a lot of unlearning, conditioning in my 30s to get here, to be good with, my life is about me, yours is about you, and I will be so bold sometimes. Can I just be so bold as to do a podcast because I want to, not because I have a set out plan of where it's headed or who's gonna be there. And we're not even gonna talk about one thing, we're gonna talk about all things, like whatever it is, whatever that is in your life. Be so bold as to leave a good paying job, like I went through that as well. And it was so bred into me that I'm not enough and I'm not it, whatever that is. I'm not that. And so it has to stop here first, period, no matter what it is we're talking about. So if we want to discover a different way to be in relation to money, to look at alternative currencies, to look at alternative communities and interactions, and change this way we do life, I have to stop here. And I have to look at what my habits and my patterns and my beliefs are, because if I have a deep-seated belief that I'm not worth anything, then how am I going to bring abundance into my life? Right?
Exactly.
It's just not going to happen.
Exactly. And I think it's that question of, what do I really want?
Yeah.
You know, and we quick to answer it, but then it's saying, ask the question again. What do you really want? Because that's not the bottom yet, you know. And then often it becomes, what do I really need? It's not so much the want, but what am I needing? What's missing? And what's not enough in my life, you know? And that's about flow too. But I mean, and what is enough is different for every person. But I don't think we spend enough time, because I think we don't have enough degrees of worthiness that we think we're worthy of spending that time, because we're still running, trying to keep up with something that's set out there for us from family and society, or whatever it is, the gender we are, or whatever it is. And for us to really step back and go, hang on a minute, you know, is this the path I was really thinking I really wanted? Is this healthy for me? Am I healthy? And what's happy? Maybe it's not happiness, but am I at peace? Am I content with what this is? You know, like, and then asking those questions. And I think as we can honor those parts of ourselves, then we can slip more into that flow, into that trust, that what we're feeling, what we're needing, what we're experiencing on our own right is us.
Yes.
And this is the real part of me. And then that trust is there, and I can slip over there. Like I can acknowledge and see that. I can start saying, wow, look at all that happening in my life, and wow, that's really cool, right? You know, and I didn't know it was going to happen, but I stepped anyway, right? And it's like that little saying, and I don't know who said it or even where I saw it, but it was like, leap and the net will appear. You know, well, you know, like I read that a few times. I had it in my fridge for many years, and you know, I would say like, oh, well, I'm scared to leap, and they're going like, well, we've seen you leap a lot, you know, and you do pretty good at it, you know. It's like, but for me, you know, like I kind of get to the end of the diving board, you know, and I wait there a long time. You know, I back up a bit, you know, and then I stand there again, you know, and I'm practicing, you know, and then I just leap, you know, and I mean, a lot of times for me in my past, I would get to the edge of the board and I would run like hell and hide. And I would still say, I want what's on the other side of that leap. But I'd run and hide, you know. And then it was the realization that I have to trust that when I leap, that net's going to be there, you know. And that to me is the flow, right? That's the flow. There was this movie years ago, an Indiana Jones movie, where Sean Connery plays his dad, and I don't know what they're looking, Holy Grail. And they're in Petra, they're in some place, and they're in this like rock or place that they're running through, and Indiana Jones is running, and his father is yelling, and just keep going, and then all of a sudden he gets to the end of this little cavern, and it's just this black abyss, and over on the other side is this room, and he can see these grails in it. Do you remember the movie? And he's standing there like right at the edge, and he is like, there's no way to get over there. And the father's yelling, you know, son, you just believe, you know. And, you know, I mean, like me, standing there for the longest time, and then he takes the step into nothing, and there is a step, and then he takes another step. Do you remember that movie? And then he gets across, right? But I think about that for me, for things, you know. And I also think that I stop beating myself up about standing at that edge. You know, because maybe I'm not supposed to leap yet, you know, and that's different for every person. And what does that look like? And maybe I'm not supposed to leap yet, you know, even though I'm trying to push myself from behind, you know, I'm at the edge, and it will happen. It's interesting. But to me, that still is about trust in the flow, right? And it can be small leaps. It's not like major life-changing things, you know, but there can be small things that lead up to that make it easier. That make it easier. And I think that we're just at a time when more and more people are looking at minimalism, they're looking at downsizing, they're looking at less work, they're looking at smaller houses, they're looking at, you know, so many different things, and saying, I don't want all of that other stuff. You know, I want something different. And not just younger age groups, you know, older age groups are looking at that too. And I think that's such a healthy thing, because I think that's part of that shift, I think, to that flow, that trust, that there is more than enough. Yeah.
Well, that's the foundation. Like, if you look at nature, any ecosystem, it's abundant, period. There's the tree doesn't go, okay, you can only have 7 nuts. It doesn't do that. It works together in relationship with the roots and the fungi and the animals around and the weather, and it makes a determination, and it just spills its guts, because that's part of its particular role in the ecosystem, in the community. Yeah. And I think we forget that as humans, that we each have our own piece of that abundance to offer. And abundance, for the record, isn't abundance when I hold it. It atrophies. So whether it's food or a commodity or money or a compliment or an idea or a thought, it dies when it's held. So it must be kept in motion in order for it to be valuable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think, and it's about knowledge too, right? It's about knowledge. And I think we tend to devalue the knowledge that can be easily shared. And I think some people are amazing resources that we don't know about, you know, and if we could just tap into those, and maybe if we can shift out of that fear-based thing, people would be more apt to share more of that. I don't know, maybe that's just a thought. I'm just kind of thinking that for the first time in my own thought. If we can shift out of fear-based and into a trust, will more people share all those valuable gifts that they have?
I think
that
they
their
do.
Abilities.
I think that's a true story, because when I teach classes, it's not that I'm an expert in anything. I assure you of that. I'm a backyard, do-it-yourself, lazy kind of a lady. So, but what I believe in is the power of the knowledge sharing and everyday people sharing what it is they're lit up in. I don't care what that is. And so what happens is I share this bit, and then somebody pipes up and goes, oh, I was doing blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, it's this beautiful engagement of, now you're contributing, and you're contributing, and you're contributing, and all I did was held the space for me to share this little bit, and you all filled in the rest. So I think that's very, very true, is that, well, we just all have our own skills and gifts, and it's a matter of trusting ourselves and being willing to be vulnerable, like we've talked about, and leap and put ourselves out there.
Yeah, and opening our mouths. And I think, like you shared, when I've done teaching of, well, especially things that are dear to me, or really dear to me, my heart, then I take away more from that opportunity than I give. That's how I feel. It's just like I come away with more knowledge from the people who come and ask questions, or from the other people that are around that are doing something different, but I think, oh, that's kind of cool. And I just think, wow, how powerful that is. I got paid to do this, and I'm taking away all of this other amazing stuff, you know, because of that. And I think that's really great when we can share that in that way.
And that's abundance. And
it is abundance.
That's reciprocity, and that's giving and receiving. And it's all wrapped up in that little tiny experience, right? Yeah, exactly. We don't own knowledge, the same as we don't own money, the same as we don't own land, we do legally own some of those things, but I don't think they were intended to be owned. I think they are of the commons. And coming back to that, way of living, or way of being, or way of seeing the world, where I'm in relation to you, and that what I do impacts, you or whoever else is in that ecosystem. That mindset, I think, is the foundation for whatever is next, whatever this is shifting into. I don't even know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we have I don't think we can fathom what's possible in that realm. And we've probably seen some things that maybe have never been explained to us in that manner, that's where it came from. But I don't think we can fathom what that can all look like, because maybe we're looking for something that's like fireworks, like maybe we're looking for something so expansive that it's just those tiny little things that are it, right? That are it every day, and we forget that's the flow, that's the trust, right? That when I get in my vehicle and I turn it, the spark plug's going to ignite, and the gas is going to make my engine run, and the tires are going to stay inflated, like it's I mean that's kind of a silly example, but it's just like we forget about just the small things every day that we trust in, that move us and flow us and keep us going, and if we can start counting those, not necessarily counting them in the sense of, but just acknowledging them in our own lives, and then seeing how amazing that is. And and I think that as part of one of those books that Charles Eisenstein has written, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible, I think that's part of that. That's that humanizing of ourselves, first of all. It's not expecting it from other people. It's saying, how do I help myself to become human again? Learning to be vulnerable, learning to accept ourselves where we're at, and being able to laugh at our foibles and love ourselves because of them, not in spite of them, but because of them. And then we can turn that to other people and where that echoes and where that ripples out through the world is, I think, one of the primary things to moving into that flow and to that trust and that letting go.
It's and that feels full circle in the sense of being involved with the Sustainability Association in town here, and teaching classes and just sort of delving into that world. People are always confused about what they can do, and I don't think my recycling or my kombucha making is changing the world. That's not happening. It is in alignment with who I am. It feels right. It feels in alignment with the ecosystem I live in. It's a choice that I make for me. But people wonder, like, what can I do and how could it possibly have impact that I have a reusable bag or whatever? But I think it's the connection to self, recognition of where I connect to everything else around me, and then honoring myself and honoring those other beings, whatever they are, plants, animals, people, by doing what is in alignment with me, what my heart wants me to do from that place of love, not fear. And then that magical, radical little act of loving yourself is what infuses the magic into whatever you're doing. I don't care if you paint boxes for a living. If that's where you come from, it's radical and it's potent and it changes the world, it has impact. So it's less about like the volume of things you do and more about the absolute, complete, centered connectedness, intention, I don't know what that is, from where you start anything.
I agree.
So it's the same as like, eating clean was one thing for me in the beginning, and it is a different thing now. So I want to feed myself good, clean, local, non-contaminated food, but sometimes I eat A&W. And so rather than beating myself up about it and being mean to myself, I'm like, oh man, could you add some matzo sauce on there? And like honor where I'm at, which is I'm going to eat this bloody burger and I'm going to love it. And that is in alignment.
Exactly.
So that is not harmful.
Yeah.
And it goes out into the world and it's profound.
That's right. That's exactly it.
As opposed to, oh, you're so terrible. Don't let anybody see you eating this burger.
Exactly. Don't let anybody see me drive through the drive-through.
Exactly.
Right? And you're right. And it's stopping that chatter that's demeaning ourselves, no matter what the choice is. Because some of the choices are, people will look at, organic produce in my shopping cart and go, oh, well, I wish I could afford that, and it's like, there they are busy beating themselves up about things, And, it was interesting because in some of the discussions, again, I'm talking about this place in Missouri that I've visited, the opportunity for them to experience living in that gift and living a totally radical, simplistic life was being able to accept people who couldn't accept that other people weren't doing that, and so, it's very interesting because, Ethan would say, like it's really great if people get on board and want to live like we do. We're not asking people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
This is just our way of dealing with the situation, and it feels right for us.
Yeah.
But where we struggle is with the people who are putting down the people who aren't living
Yes.
like us. And so it really made me stop and think about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like, right, yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the acceptance of all of us wherever we're at.
Yes, yes.
on that continuum.
Yeah.
And just saying, yeah, that's where I'm at, that's
Yeah.
where they're at, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? And